Start the recording. All right, so in the chat box, go ahead and let me know if you're on and you can hear my voice and everything is moving. That almost rhymed, and it almost meant something. It rhymed, but it didn't mean anything. All right. So this is Justin with Toucan Websites, and we're here to talk about SEO tonight. I was working with Pete earlier and getting some stuff together, and so I have a presentation for us to go through as we're going to talk about the power of SEO. And let's see, everybody is muted. Let's see, we have some questions out here. Okay, there we go. Good to go. Good to go. Right on. Fantastic. All right, let's kick this off really quick. I'm just going to leave it here because we're probably going to flip it back and forth to the browser. So one thing we want to do is make Google love you. Do the things that are right out there. In this particular presentation, we're going to kind of go over what is Google, what is SEO, and just kind of start from a groundwork to lay the foundations for all the things that we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. So this is going to be an every Wednesday night thing. We're going to work on this, and if you have questions, definitely be prepared. Come with a couple of questions that you'd like to have answered, especially if it's pertaining to the topic that we're going to go over. And if you see something, definitely let me know. I'll try to keep an eye out on the Q&A panel. Pete is actually out of town tonight, so usually he helps me out with that. So be patient. I'll try to get back to you, but let's definitely make this interactive as possible, because everybody has a little bit different business, right? If we were all in the same business, we wouldn't have a business. What makes us popular, what makes us valuable to our customers, is that we do something a little bit differently than the next guy. Even if we have the same product, how we present it, how we engage with them is going to be completely different. And even if you don't have a product, I'm going to show you how this is really important for you as a brand. And if you have kids, what this means to them. So I want to go into all of this so it makes sense from the ground up. So when you talk about who am I, where did I come from, this is me. I like to be a little bit goofy. Skydiving is awesome. I totally love it. One of these days I have to get certified. I've been tandem a few times. And on the right, I'm a Jimmy Buffett fan, a parrot head, a diehard parrot head. I grew up on a sailboat, so I never liked it growing up, but man, as soon as I moved off the boat, I just missed it. It's one of those things that gets ingrained in you. So I always had that lifestyle goal. We had a 42-foot sailboat we lived on for a few years in the Bay Area. And back in that time, I've told this story a couple of times, but essentially I went to school in Berkeley. This is junior high. It wasn't Berkeley State, but I was there, and I was junior high, man, and I had this presentation. We were goofing around. My buddies and I were talking about Saturday Night Live, Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, and we were doing the church ladies in class. We just totally weren't paying attention to my computer class, and the professor asked us to build a program to draw something and to draw our name. So we were just kind of heard it out of the corner of our eyes, and we're like, oh man, that sucks. And then we went back to doing our impressions of the skit that happened on Saturday Night Live, and totally missed it. So we were programming all this stuff, and again, we were in our teens, and my buddy and I were just like, man, I don't know how everybody's done. And what everybody else did, because they paid attention in class, was to actually make a program that just only drew their name. And if you're into programming at all, to do something that's finite, that just says do this, is very simple. What we did is we actually created a drawing program in a week. So I got into computers in an early stage. My stepdad was a programmer. I've been around it forever. And one thing that I know, I loved computers at the time, and when I went to school for computers, and I worked for computers, and for fun I was playing on computers, I got burnt out. I got tired of it, and I realized that there's a better way to do a lot of this stuff. There are people who are passionate about programming, and I was doing it because it was there and it was easy. So I wanted out. I got my MBA, and I started looking at all this stuff from a different standing. So instead of looking at how can I program this, how can I build this, I started looking at how can all these pieces come together, and how can I make this all work as one. So as I was doing that, in this MBA program, I had a professor, and he told me that Facebook wouldn't amount to anything. It was just a bunch of people hanging out. And I said, well, that's what magazines are for. They make a lot of money, so I had to dive into this. My fiance at the time was a flight attendant, and so I got to fly all over the place, go to every conference that I could talk my way into, and basically went out to prove them wrong. And I did. I've built websites that to prove my company that I needed to that they needed to upgrade their website presence because they were doing it wrong, and I was outranking them with my demo site, and so things like that. And so when Pete came around, we were actually kind of doing a similar thing. I was helping another buddy out with a real estate group, and Pete had a really great idea that he was going to blow that out of the water and just going to take it like to everybody's house in every city around the states. And I thought, that's awesome. So he asked for some help, and we built him a website, and we've been working together ever since. So he wanted to give a lot of people the ability to do what I do. Like there's so much information out there. What does this actually mean? Because everybody's out there trying to make it look complicated so you buy their system. And what we're trying to do is make it sure that you know how to do it so that you don't necessarily have to go out and buy a system. You can figure out how to do it on your own from your own home and for your own business. We have a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of, let's see, do we have questions? Sorry, I'm learning this a little bit as we go. This is a little bit different than the interface that I'm used to. So yeah, we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need for your business and the things that are going to go on with the projects that you're working on. So one of the things that comes out, and I love going back to, is what's the one thing I can do today that will make me money tomorrow? SEO, there's all these tactics, all these games, all these programs out there that will allow you to kind of game the system and get higher in Google really, really fast. And that can work, but the problem is it's really short-lived. When I look at this quote, I think, what can I do today that's going to build me up so I can make money tomorrow? I think that's a very important distinction, because there's a lot of ways that you can game the system, but in the end, you're playing somebody else's game, and the house always wins. So if you've heard recently, actually, it could be any time. You can listen to this recording months from now, and it'll still make sense. But recently, Google's made some changes, and they constantly make changes because they're out for the regular guy of you and me when we're searching for something. They sell advertising, and they want you and me to be able to say, I'm looking for the best donut shop. Where can I go to find the best donuts? Now, they want the advertisers to be able to be seen, but they want you and me to be able to go to Google. We don't say we Yahooed a question. We don't say, we Binged something. We say we Googled it. That's become a term that we use every day. Even if we use Bing, even if we use Yahoo, we Googled the question. And that's the important significance here, is that we want to make sure that we're doing things that Google wants, and the way that we do that is to help actual people. So there's a number of programs out there that will zip you to the top of Google, but when Google says no, they say no very hard. There's people that are making six-figure incomes that all of a sudden one day they wake up and they're making a third of their income because they did it the wrong way and they built their business on a house of cards. So with what we're going to do tonight is we're just going to go over some of the basic stuff so that you build a solid foundation, just as we're building a solid foundation in this education, a solid foundation for your business. We want to make sure that we wake up every day and say, what's the one thing I can do today that will make me money tomorrow? And you know the answer to that question, that it's giving out excellent content that helps other real people. I'm going to go into some other things that'll give you something to do tonight that you can put in place right away, and you can start framing these out. You don't need a website. You don't need anything. What you need is like a copy of Microsoft Word, and you can start putting these things down. The thing is when you need a website, you can get a website up really fast, and that's totally fine. But if you have somebody else do it, having it in your own words makes a huge difference and a huge impact on the people that come to you and see what you're doing. If your personality is your brand in a lot of instances, and even in instances where maybe you're doing things with another person, it's really important to have a cohesive voice throughout everything you're doing. And if you can be that voice, I highly recommend it. There are marketing companies out there that will do the SEO for you, and some of those are great, but usually it never beats the owner putting himself out there every once in a while. And a lot of it's just because you know things that the customer doesn't know. You're an expert in your field. I work a lot with warehouse management systems. So I work with businesses that are learning how to grow into needing these systems that we're selling. They've been making do. They've been battling every day as sales came in, and they're growing, they're succeeding, but there's a certain point where you need to systematize it. So that's where me and my team come in. We come in and we show them how to do it, how they can leverage systems to move up and scale faster. So this is really important to them, but a lot of times they might not know those basic questions that I know just because I've been in it for longer, that I've seen 100 companies. I know how they all break down and work, and I can say, this is why we do this, and this is why we do this. It's because there's the consequence on the other side. So you as a business owner or a friend or even an employee or somebody looking for a position, you have an expertise, and by putting it out there, you create value, and that's what Google is looking for. So yeah, I kind of took a long trail to get back there, but essentially that's what it is, and I wanted you to understand that everything we do, it builds up, and if we do things that are good and help people, Google sees that and approves. They've built a ton of algorithms. I'm going to show you some things out there that might blow your head off. It's very cool what the search engines are able to do at this point. So definitely keep that in mind. What can I do today that will make money tomorrow? Too many times we think, I got to get our website up, I got to do posts, and it's fear. There's fear there. It's daunting. It's in front of us. My biggest recommendation is video, and I know sometimes it's really hard to put yourself out there that much, but Google rewards you for it. So it just depends. You have to find your own voice in your own way. And I'll show you down the line, if video doesn't work for you, I'll show you how we got around it with our business, because we tried to do some recordings and it didn't come out the way that we wanted to, and we're last minute, how do we make this work? We found something, and I actually like it better than me being on a screen. I'm okay with being on a screen, but this looks better. Not everybody wants to look at my goofy face, right? So what is this Google thing that we're talking about, and how does this all break down? So let me just see if we have any questions. All right. Oh, here we go. All right. We'll just leave that up. All right. So the number of links to your page. This is when Google first started out. This was sort of the metric, right? So it's kind of like if you're thinking about Facebook, how many friends do you have? How many likes do you have on your page? That's kind of how they originally built Google, was saying the person that had the most links has the best content, so they must be better than everybody else. Well, that's an easy algorithm to build, but over time, people started seeing that and said, okay, you know what? I know a great way to deal with this. I'm going to just pay somebody out there to go build a ton of links to my website, and I'll win the battle. Well, enough people did that, and the people like you and me who are searching said, this is total bunk. I'm searching for this one thing, and it's not relevant. Like, it's just a bunch of junk, because this one person was able to pay 2,000 more people to go create a link for them. So they started tweaking it a little bit and getting a little bit smarter. And I don't mean Google was getting smarter. I think they were smart to begin with, but they started making the algorithm smarter. So it would go out and really try to identify what's a real link. So a link is usually pretty good for you. I would never, ever, ever pay for a link back to your site. If anybody asks you to do that or offers that to you, just flat out refuse. It's not worth it. These links, there's two different types. There's internal links and inbound links. So if you have a website and you link to your contact page, that's an internal link. If you have a blog post and you link to another blog post of your own, that's an internal link. And it's just saying, this is how it's all interrelated. And Google takes account of that, and it's good. It shows, just like you're writing a paper for high school or for college, you're writing it for your professor. If you don't cite your resources, you get graded down. The same thing with Google. If you write a huge 2,000-word blog post and you don't link to anything, that's basically like turning in a paper to your MBA professor and saying, I wrote this all on my own. These are all my own thoughts. He doesn't care what your thoughts are. He wants to make sure that you researched it. And the same thing with Google. They want to make sure that you know what you're talking about and that other people have a similar opinion. And also that you're basically leading people around the internet, because the more people move around, the more ads they see. So it works out for Google. And always keep in mind, they're looking out for you and me as searchers, but they're also looking out for themselves. So always keep that little nugget in the back of your mind and ask, how is Google profiting? How am I helping Google make money by selling ads? Because that's what they're looking at. The other thing is going to be the authority of those linking pages. So let's say, Pete sends a link to me. Well, Pete's a pretty popular guy. So when he sends a link to me, that's a lot better than my brother sending a link to me, because my brother doesn't really have a website. So, it's just kind of like if you were Nike, you're going to go after Michael Jordan to support your shoes, right? Because if Steve from the bus this morning tries to sell you a $200 pair of shoes, you're going to wonder. But if Michael Jordan tries to sell you a $200 pair of shoes, you're going to say, you know what? He knows a lot about shoes, and his business rides on it. He makes millions of dollars on it. So chances are when he recommends a shoe, it's probably going to be a good shoe. So think about that too. You want to make sure that when you get these links and as they're passing them around, that the weight of the person giving them contributes a lot to that. And this isn't the full breadth of how Google calculates their all their rankings and stuff, but it all kind of boils down to this. So I wanted to do this, and I'm going to show you a little bit of code right here, but this is all the code that I'm going to show you. And this is the anchor text. So it really also depends on how you do it. Now, don't go and do this every time, but they say about 30% right now is about where you should be of this, where you're saying, if I'm trying to get dog training and rank high for dog training, I need a certain amount of links to my website /dog training with dog training in, this is called the URL or the link, and then also what we call the anchor text. So the part that's the words that are underlined, the hyperlink. So I have dog training here, and this is what we call an optimized link. Now, it's really hard to get people to do this because sometimes, you might be talking about training your dog, and that's a different keyword. Training your dog is a different keyword, and it could be linked to dog training. But that's kind of a good thing, right? Because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm being authentic. Like I'm talking, it's readable. The sentence is readable. It's pointing to your site. It's not perfect. And if everything is perfect all the time, Google gets really suspicious. So having that sort of natural flow makes a lot of sense. So I hope I didn't, spook you out too much with a little bit of code, but I think we're going to be, in the next few years, we're all going to be a little bit more able to write these little bits of code. So later on in one of the trainings, I'm going to show you guys a couple codes. The link is one, how to embed an image is another, and we'll probably get into that when we get into WordPress and websites. And so how to take an opt-in box and put it on your widget bar or on your sidebar so that when people come to your website, they opt in. And we want to make sure that we do that because, man, I've been to so many people and so many clients because I build websites for people. I help them with their internet presence as well. And I've had a number of people who have spent an insane amount of money on a website and for pay-per-click to get people to their site. And on their site, they don't have a phone number or an email address or a way to opt in. And they could have the most compelling copy in the world, but a very, very, very small percentage of people are going to go click that contact tab and fill out a form for you because You just made it that much harder for them. And think about it. Think about how you signed up for this webinar. Chances are, if you were on the homepage to C2CREIA, you saw the banner on the right, and you clicked it, and as you clicked it, it popped up a form with all of your information filled out. You want to make it as simple as possible, and we want to add these things into it. So as we get a little bit further on, we'll talk about some things that you might need to know, and there's probably like 4 or 5 bits of code, so it's going to be a really, really easy one to do. All this stuff is usually taken care of. If you have what we call a content management system like WordPress, that's a program that does your website, you don't need any of that. That's why we developed this stuff like that, is because I started doing web pages when we had to code it all in Notepad. And it was a lot of fun, and I learned how to do a ton of stuff with it, but every single page had to be coded separately. So if I wanted to change anything, I had to go to every single page and change every font. I had to go and do that and break it all apart. It was incredibly daunting. What they did is WordPress, Squarespace, these other programs, they built it so you basically say every time I build a title, and just like here in PowerPoint, you'll notice the titles on all of these all look the same. It's because they have a particular style that they've applied to it. So if I change the PowerPoint template that I use, just like if I changed a theme in WordPress, all of a sudden everything would change, but it would all look the same. And I wouldn't have to go to every single page. I'd click one button and everything is done. And so that's what I like to do, because coding, it just is a lot of wasted time for me. I can get a lot more accomplished, and I can help a lot more people if I let the coding happen in the front end and then make everything just work on the back end. So if that sounds good to you guys, all right, we got a hi, Justin. Okay, let's see who we got. All right, somebody just said hi. So if you have a question, feel free to pop that in. I'm going to leave this open so I can see those as they fly through. All right, so we talked about keywords with dog training. So let's look at like where to get those keywords. And this is going to be a very general one, and this is going to be the start of how you're going to define what your keywords are. Because I've done it in the past where I thought I knew the keywords, and when I went to implement them, nobody came to my site. And what I found out was the people, the keywords were my keywords, but the keywords that people were using were completely different. And that was, you know, the $4 million question. What keywords are people searching for? And to know that, you really need to get into the shoes of your customer. And what I like to call it is, who is your Steve? And it comes from an older movie called The Tao of Steve, and basically all the cool guys were named Steve, Steve McQueen, Steve, you know, Steve Austin, Steve, you know, all the cool Steves. And so I call it, who is your Steve? What you want to do is create an avatar, an imaginary person that you're talking to. Every time you make a blog post, every time you're on a sales call, every time you're working with somebody, you want to know, who is it that I'm really interacting with? Who is it that I'm engaging with, and what are they concerned? Okay, so I have a question. We have a web designer that needs to know our password in order to maintain or make changes in the future. Is that necessary? I would say probably. It depends which password. A designer would tend to need to have access to the files, so you might give them the FTP account. It depends. If you're concerned about, you know, trusting this person, that might be an issue you want to address and maybe find somebody else. Everybody that works on my sites, I give them the passwords to, because it makes it that much easier. They need to have access to the files, which would be an FTP login. Generally, they have access to wherever your domain is, which is be like GoDaddy or Namecheap or one of those. I use NameSilo. And then they want to have access, like if you have WordPress or Squarespace or one of those, there's going to be an access to the admin panel, so you want to make sure that they have access to that. The thing is, you also want to make sure that you have regular backup, so if something really bad does happen, you can be back up and running very quickly, but it costs a lot for them to be sitting around not being able to do something and having to ask for that next password. So I tend to lean towards giving them the access that they need to get the job done. But that is definitely a sort of a character judge. You want to make sure that they're who you feel comfortable enough doing that. And the password should also not be something that's the same password as to your bank. I'll just tell you right now, I use a program called LastPass, and I was going to get into this in probably the next week, but something that you might want to take a look at is going through and making sure each of your passwords is unique and incredibly complicated, something that you can't remember. And the reason being is because LastPass is the last password you'll ever need. You have one password to LastPass, and then all of the crazy passwords don't matter because you don't have to remember them. You just have to log into LastPass, and every time you go to Facebook, it logs you right in, and you don't have to worry about it. What I really like is it allows me to have different, what do you call, personalities. So, for instance, since I do websites, I'll have a client, and we'll, have all these passwords that we need to keep track of. So I'll have a personality for that client, and we can have very difficult passwords. And I've actually had clients come back to me when they've forgotten their passwords, or they hired another designer, and then now they don't have any of those anymore, and they needed to get into their website. So I tend to like having all that stuff for exactly those purposes. And generally, if you have a designer, more than likely you're going to have something a month from now that you want to have done, and they're going to be able to need to get in to do that. So if you have a different password for each of those places, you don't have to worry about them having your password to your bank. So a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's a really, really important question, and I wanted to answer it right away because that's it's something that gets me. Security is always on the forefront. All right, so going back to Steve. So one thing we want to take a look at is the age. What actual age group are you looking at? So I have a friend that has a dance studio. So we took a look and what is the age group and the demographic coming in? And she is very lucky in the sense that she actually gets to see all those people. So she knows and she can visually count those. But when you're on the internet, you might not have that much of a direct connection with your customer. So you might not necessarily know, especially if you're just starting out. So what you can do is you can actually go find this information somewhere, and I'll get to that in a minute. But find out what age group. That's very important, because if you're aiming at teenagers, it's very different than aiming at somebody looking at retirement years. They're going to have different concerns. The education level. You want to make sure that if you're aiming at someone that has a high school education versus somebody with a master's degree or a doctorate, you want to make sure that you're using the terms that person would identify with. Because if you make it the wording too low or too high to read, the person will sort of abandon. They'll lose confidence, or they'll lose interest because you're not speaking to them. Jobs, sports, hobbies, cars, where do they live, the towns, the cities. All this turns into demographic data, but it's really important. Once you know your Steve, you know who you're talking to. And for me personally, when I'm doing a video, if I'm doing a webinar recording, if I'm doing a podcast, all these things come into effect because I picture that person in my head, and I can say, okay, I'm talking to Steve and we're having a conversation, and I know exactly how to hit, and we're working that through. We're going along, and to me, it's an imaginary conversation. Right now, I have a picture in my head as I'm talking to all of you of who I'm talking to. So I might be off, I might be dead on, but that's one of the things. I will connect with the people who are closest to the person I'm imagining in my head. So if I imagine accurately, I'm going to connect with more people. So definitely keep that in. Magazines. This is a really cool factor. So I actually just learned this a month ago. These magazines are really dependent upon advertising. So they have done all of the research for you. So if you have a magazine that pertains to your niche and they have a website, chances are they have some type of demographic data that they post on their website that you can just go grab. So they were showing me Men's Health. So we go to Men's Health and we look at it, and there's all kinds of demographic data. It said, if you advertise with us, these are the people that you're going to hit. Between 18 and 35, there's 200,000. If 35 to 45, there's this many. So all of that's broken out. So if you find the magazine that corresponds to the exact person that you're going for, you can find all this information. You can get all the demographic data. It's magic. What I'm going to show you probably in a couple of weeks is in Facebook, what that looks like and how to get all this stuff from Facebook, because everybody fills out their profile in Facebook. And so you just go in like you're going to make an ad. You don't even have to spend a penny. And it will show you exactly, if you make an ad for this, this is how many people are there. So we're looking at making a brick and mortar business here, and we were looking at demographic data, and we had a specific thing that we wanted to do. So something that a lot of people would have liked. What I can do is say, you know what, it's probably going to be mostly women, probably between 28 and 40, I think we said 42, and you know, they would like these certain things, and we just changed the zip code. Now, when we changed the zip code, we saw the number of people that liked that thing in that demographic in that zip code, and we just watched it go up and down and up and down, and we found the highest one. We say that's the zip code that we need to open that brick and mortar business. And tell me if that's not magical for you. Before you spend a dime on a property, before you sign a lease, before you do anything, you should have this information, because if you go to the bank and show them that, you know, you're going to be much more likely to get a loan. So, and you're going to feel a lot more comfortable at night too, because you're going to be able to go in and see all that stuff and know that when you open your doors, there's 200,000 people that you have access to that probably want your business that you just need to get in front of. So what that all comes around to is knowing who that Steve is, because who Steve is really going to be the key to getting everything else in place. The other part is what Steve's looking for. You know, imagine, you know, the other side is often we talk about Homer Simpson. You know, Homer Simpson's a simple guy. He's very straightforward. He doesn't want to do anything. He wants to sit on the couch. He wants to drink Duff beer and watch TV. So when we're doing something, when we're making our offering, we need to make it so stupid simple that even Homer Simpson would get it and understand it and be willing to try it. So we want to know the base concerns for Steve. We want to know what exactly is he looking for. So if you're building a golf club, golf and country club, that person would have very specific goals. Like if you're in a high-end neighborhood, they might want a certain level of prestige, a certain level of comfort, of being taken care of. Whereas if you have a public golf course, people might just want easy access, be able to schedule it from work, to say, you know what, I'm taking off at 3, let me schedule in some tee time and be out of here. So knowing what their concerns are is huge, and we're going to get to how that comes out in just a minute. So next up is content curation. So I don't know if you've heard of this before, but that's basically what Huffington Post was built on, was going out and finding the news and just regurgitating it and reframing it. And that's an NLP term, but reframing it in a way that makes people really desire to read that article. We have another one that's called Upworthy, and they are just, if you ever want to learn how to write headlines, that is the website to learn how to do it. They do it better than anybody else out there. And you've probably seen their stuff all over Facebook. And people just see it and they share it before they even watch the video, because they know that the headline grabbed them. So basically, curation is finding a news article that's interesting in your niche, and you reframing it for your Steve, because they're writing it for their Steve, and you can take 3 articles and rewrite it for your person. So for my business, we do warehouse management systems, inventory control, things like that. And very recently, there was it last week, had 3 different recalls happen. Well, to us, that's really interesting, because our customers, we're selling them traceability so that if somebody does a recall, they can immediately pull it off their shelves, and it's something that they get audited for. So what we were able to do is take those articles that were probably kind of boring, that made them afraid, but reframe it and show them that how not only was this going on and how it was a real threat, but how we could make it so it wasn't threatening at all, that we can show them how they can have all of this taken care of, and even in the worst case scenario, they could sleep at night. So it's a really powerful tool, and I'm going to get back into Feedly and how you're able to pull in those keywords that you found that Steve is looking for and put them in here so you can look at all the news happening across the internet in just a few minutes a day and know exactly what to write your paper on. So your blog post. I got into too many school references. So Feedly's been awesome. Before that, we had Google Reader, but this is getting even better and allows me to do stuff even from my phone. So it's a really fast program, and I follow about, I think at the last count, like 380 websites, all of the news from 380 websites every day, and it takes me about 10-15 minutes. So it's really, really handy, and I'm going to show you what else we do with it. So once we have it, we need to keep it somewhere, and I use Evernote, and I highly recommend just go out and get Evernote. It's free. Just download it. It's probably on your phone already. What it allows you to do is take notes from anywhere. What you're looking at here is my notebook on home design, because I just love design. I've always loved architecture. I grew up doing construction. That's why I got into real estate. I love it, and when I see like articles with pictures like this, I gotta have it, because later on I'm going to want to refer back to it. Because actually this house I would love to own. I'd love to own anything with a shape like this. So you can see on the left I also have a bunch of keywords, and I'm using those keywords to track articles I find on the internet and just zip it right in. And it takes one click of the button and it's in my notebook, and I can go through, and at the end of the week I can make a video and just say, here's the notes of everything that happened in this keyword this week, and make a big blog post or send out a email. So being able to find the information quickly, bring it in, and then take it and just repurpose it. Just put a little twist on it, put it in your voice, and put it out. And just like we learned earlier, you're going to want to cite your source, so make sure you have the link. And you'll notice right here, every time I clip something, it puts the link in the website in this little note post here. So I can always go back to my source. I can copy that and put it right in my blog post, link back to the source. So you need a link for every few hundred words, and now I have it. It's just all in one. It makes it really, really simple. Because frankly, I'm lazy. I like to do it once, and I like to do it in 5 minutes. I'm the homer at some points. So we talked about how to get information out there about your brand and how to talk to people. But what I think is almost even more important, especially as you're learning your keywords and learning who this Steve is to just be quiet and listen sometimes, and to go out there. So what I did is I just did a quick search on my name, and this is great. It's called Social Mention. It goes out there and it finds all the instances of this and all the social sites and all the crazy stuff. So it's really handy because I can keep tabs on all this stuff, and you can see sort by date, so I can find out all the stuff that's happening right now. Social media is super fast, and it's super with tool sets like this, you can be super, super relevant. I spoke last Tuesday on the webinar with Pete about basically how you want to get in front of people using things that they're already talking about. So you'll notice, like right now, if you're on any social site or if you're by the water cooler, everybody's talking about the World Cup, right? So I saw this great article on somebody in real estate did this one of all of the homes of people playing in the World Cup, like the cool homes or something. And before that, there was another keyword that people were searching for, and it was what we call a trending topic, things that were super exciting to a bunch of people. And so somebody else did another one of all the homes that person did, and it was like Marilyn's birthday, and they showed all of Marilyn's homes. And these were all different people, but this is exactly what you should be doing, is find a way to make your stuff relevant to the stuff that people are searching for. Don't be spammy about it, but make it interesting. So, that's kind of a cool thing. Like if it's Marilyn's birthday, or, people are celebrating Marilyn Monroe, and somebody does a post of all the homes that they lived in, that's actually kind of cool. You get to see all the places this celebrity, this amazing person was in throughout her life, and kind of see some of the things that she was a part of, and it kind of draws you in. It's part of a story. So being relevant like that was really powerful. And I'm going to actually show you the site right now. But So this is really cool. So the top users, I use my name the most. But look, number 2, Pete. So if you were a brand and you're doing stuff online and you knew who was using your name the most, these are the people that you want to get in touch with and contact, because they might use your name more. These are your most avid followers. So definitely get in touch with them. The other thing I think is really cool is sources. You want to go in through here and find out where the sources are coming from, because if you know where they're coming from, let's say everything's coming from Twitter and I'm barely doing anything on Twitter, that would be a really good indication that I need to get over to Twitter to do the work, because that's where everybody's talking about me. Now, I just put my name in here, but this could be your keyword as well. So let's say it's dog training. We can go through and find out how far all this stuff is going, who's using these words. And you know, I use my name, and I telling you guys need to Google your name, find out what's there. You know, there's a lot of times you don't know, but other people are Googling you. If they're going to do business with you, if I'm going to drop 30 grand with somebody, I'm going to look them up. It's just a given. When I was looking for, you know, a new position and was, you know, making a career change, man, I made sure that the first few pages of Google was everything that I wanted an employer to see. And I'll talk to you later about how I use LinkedIn to really, you know, really boost that and to double my salary. So knowing this stuff is huge, but going out and finding it and using it is really what the value is. So all of this stuff, like, this is what we want to do every week, is just to show you how to do some of these things, give you guys a couple of tricks that you can put into action this week and really get started. We're probably going to come back to social mention and another website. The other one I have brought up here is, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Gili, but it basically goes through forums. And a forum is sort of, is exactly what you think, but it's online. So it's a way to communicate. You'll have a topic of, let's say, you know, cheese sandwiches. What's your favorite way to make cheese sandwiches? And then everybody will reply with their own idea of how to make cheese sandwiches and how their way is better than all the rest. But it's a discussion board basically and it's very similar to what we started out in the internet with, called bulletin boards. So we're able to have all these conversations in these other places, and you can pull that in and find out where people are talking. I did this for my other company, and it was incredible, because they had just like mountains of paper and pictures that people have sent in as testimonials that they've never put on their site. We went out and looked in the forums. There were people talking about them that they had no idea were talking about them. They're praising them. But because their website was done poorly, they couldn't share any of it. So they were embedding pictures and stuff from all of our competition and saying our brand was better, but they couldn't share it because we had our site, you know, a bad website. So this is just like one way to go out there and do that. So dog training, we can find out the top users of dog training. These are the people who are probably big social influencers. So if you went out and connected with these people, that'd be a great way to start out, because you can get in front of some of the big people. You might start off at the bottom of the list, because those people will probably want to make more connections to get to the top of the list. The other hashtags that people are using related to dog training, and the sources where people are talking about it. So you can tell PhotoBucket's like really high on both of these. So PhotoBucket might be a cool place to hang out and put some stuff up, see if anybody comes to your website from it. So all of these tools are basically looking to give you a bunch of information, but what we're going to try to do is help you see the information and figure out an actionable plan after you've seen it. So take a look at these things, look at the other keywords that you might use if dog training is your keyword. Go in and find the other people that are using it, connect with them, find out other words, you know, that people are using in social media. Hashtag is a social media specific, and then find out where the stuff is happening. So that's kind of our goal with this, and don't worry, we're not done yet. So Gili will allow you to go into those forums and make those connections and give you an opportunity to find out a keyword where people are talking about what you're interested in, and you can go to that forum now and make a comment and show yourself to be an authority. One of the things that I really like is a website called Quora, where you pose questions and answer other people's questions, and it's a really cool discussion board. But what makes it really powerful is that it paints you as it's a way for you to show your strengths, show off that what you know, and help other people. And that's really what a lot of this stuff is about. Helping other people, bringing it into their life, and making, showing them that you're able to help them better than the next guy, and by giving them a little bit at the beginning to facilitate that. So to kick it off, what I want you to do tonight is what we call frequently asked questions and should ask questions. And these, just like it says, the questions that you always get whenever you're on a sales call. And I know because I do sales calls and I'm on the phone pretty much all day, because even on the internet, you still need to close sales. And I think there's still power in picking up the phone and calling a customer and making stuff happen. So when I get a phone call, I know that people are always, like almost every time, are going to ask me about RFID. And because nobody knows what that is, right? They see it in a magazine as they're on the way between airports, and Fortune magazine says I need RFIDs. It's like, okay, well, what's your business? And their business does not facilitate that. So I have to basically convince them right off the bat that RFID is not the way to go. And it's not in my best interest, in the fact that that basically drops my sale in half, because RFID is far more expensive. However, I can't operate like that. I can't sell somebody something that I know they're not going to use, because they're not going to come back next year when they need more labels or other things. And just because they can tell their buddies that they have RFID doesn't make them earn double income next year. So, and that's my goal, as I'm in it to grow other people's business. Otherwise, there's no point for me doing this. The should ask question. This is where the gold comes in. Now, a should ask question is something that you never get asked. It's something that people come to you and they don't even know about yet, because they haven't gotten into your realm. So for me, actually, let me give the case of my dad. So he's a general contractor. The frequently asked question, how much and how fast? They want the bottom line, like how much is it going to cost? The should ask question is, what's the difference between having a bonded and licensed contractor do the work? Because that's where the gold is. Because my dad's bid is going to come in higher than a lot of guys on the street. And that's because he's licensed and bonded and insured, and he has everything covered, so that if anyone gets into an accident on the job site at your home, it's going to be taken care of. However, most of those people that come in at a much lower price, if something happens, SOL, oh well, so sorry, Aunt Molly. So this is your opportunity to tell people things that they should know, but probably haven't gotten to the point where they know that stuff yet. And so you can be that voice that says, hey, look, the next guy's probably not going to tell you this, but I'm going to let you know that RFID is probably not the way to go, that you should be looking up barcodes, or you should be, if you're looking at dog training, that it really should not be about the dog, it should be about the person. Or if you're looking at bakeries, you really need to find out where that flour is coming from, because if it comes from the wrong spot, or if you're talking about coffee, what is fair trade, and what does that mean? So there's a lot of things that come up that you probably are having conversations about, but or conversations around. But if you address those questions right out, then when they go to the next person's website, or when they look at a competitor, the competitor probably isn't going to talk about that stuff. They're going to keep it on the DL, and just because you brought it up, you're going to look like the authority and the resource, because you are, because you've identified yourself, you've worked with these people, and you've made it good to go. So baby steps, like the least that you can do is 5. I mean, come on, we can all do 5 questions of each of frequently asked questions, and 5 should ask questions. If you really are in it to win it, and you want to get this rocking and rolling, write out 10 of each, and make it, put those out there. Start writing out not just the question, but your response to it. And it could be even bullet points. Like, what are your key points that you want to identify? So if I'm looking at RFID versus barcoding, what are my 10 points? Boom, 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 boom. I'm sorry, not 10 points, but what are the points that I should be looking at? And then I should have 10 other questions or 9 other questions. And there's no upper limit. If you want to be really rocking and rolling and hit 15 or 20, absolutely go with it. Definitely go with it. The more that you do, the better, because this is something that you're not going to do once. You're going to do every day. You're going to be constantly looking to find out, what questions can I answer? You know why? Because that's what people are searching. People don't type your keyword into Google. Back in the day, I knew how to hack Google, so I knew what keywords that I wanted to find. So I was better at searching than most of my friends. So it made me a better programmer, because frankly, that's a lot of stuff to memorize, all the programming code. So if I wanted to do something, I'd know how to find the keyword and say, okay, search for this, and find somebody else who's done it and copy and paste. So the same thing. If you're looking for barbecues, what are you going to be searching for? So you might be searching for a barbecue recipe. You might be searching for, what barbecue to use in a stone island. What marble to put on a barbecue island. What chairs to go with them. All these things, your customers are looking for, and that's what they're typing into Google. They're asking Google a question. They're picking up their phone, they're hitting the little microphone button and asking, "Hey Siri, where am I going? What's the best restaurant near me? Where's the nearest Italian place? Where can I get gelato?" They're asking a question. So by identifying these questions, writing to it, making a video about it, making a blog post, making a podcast about it, now you're that much more relevant. And if they're near you, your stuff's going to come up first. That's just a part of it. Google wants to answer somebody's questions, and if you answer those questions better than anybody else, you'll win. Because that's what people want to share. Imagine if, I share stuff all the time. It's usually recipes or, goofy Star Wars stuff, but that's what I'm into. So if I see something that, is awesome, I'm going to share that forward. If somebody finds something that answers their question, they're going to share it forward. So, and that sharing is going to create that backlink to your website that Google is looking for to rank you higher. And that's a natural backlink. So that's, that goes back to exactly what we're trying to do, is be authentic, put everything out there that we need to, but do it in a way that helps real people like you and me. So this is your main homework, your frequently asked questions, 5 or 10, depending on how you want to go. And to build your avatar, identify your Steve, find out a magazine that's in your niche, and go there and check it out. So let's go to, I think it's menshealth.com. You'll have to forgive me. I haven't seen this for a few days, so it'll take me a second to scroll down. So if you go to corporate, advertise, I think is where it is. You might have to bounce around a little bit. They're all going to be a little bit differently. Let's see. Advertising or audience? Might be audience. Yeah, so if you're advertising, this is how they break it down, which is also really good information to know. But let's go to audience. I think this is where the cool stuff is. Here you go. So it's going to tell you their total audience is 12,877,000. So that's a really good sample size. I don't know if you've taken statistics. I hated statistics, but the one thing I got out of it is that every time somebody publishes something about like what coffee I should drink or the next diet craze, they'll cite some type of study that was done. Go into that study and find out how many people were in it. It's usually like 5 to 13, and that is not statistically significant. So a lot of this stuff is like cherry picked so that they can say something that's going to make you interested and try their new diet pill. But if we look here at Men's Health, 13 million people, that's a significant sample size. So that if 81% are men, 20% are women. That's pretty huge. That's a large part of it. So if you were aiming something that was towards the female gender and you think Men's Health might be something they're looking at, a lot of this stuff might still pertain. Married, single. This stuff is going to give you a lot of information, and it's going to have multiple things broken out. Here's all them against all their competitors and why you should advertise with them instead. But all of this is really, really important. If you can identify the largest group of people that you can hit, that's awesome. But you don't actually have to go after the largest part. You could go after the smallest part. If let's go back to this one. Let's say you wanted to hit the underserved. Well, I would say that men's health might be underserving women, 20% of women. So if you found a way that fit into men's health category but was targeted to women, that might be very interesting to that underserved group. So the main thing I'm saying here is, you want to know your numbers, but the numbers become part of your story depending on how you use them. You can go after the large group because there's more fish in the sea and it's easier to get, or you could go after the smaller group because you're willing to make something that's very targeted for that group and really convert a lot of them. So it's kind of like the shotgun approach or the rifle approach. You can go after 200 people and see if you can nail 2 or 3, or go after 3 people and nail all of them and make sure that you get a sale out of each and every one of them. So, or a conversion, and it could be a sale. You can make an email opt-in. It could be to download your book, to buy your book. When I talk about conversions, that could be anything. It could be, saying that they like you on Facebook. But the deal is you need to know who it is that you're targeting so you know how to talk to them, because if you talk to that person correctly, they're going to do what you need. They're going to make that conversion. They're going to trust you more because you're speaking exactly to them. Okay, dude, really good question. My company, Steve, runs the gamut as to age demographic. How do I target such a vast audience? Dude, that is a great question. And was it last week or a couple weeks ago when Pete and I were talking, we talked about Facebook ads and kind of the same thing. He hits a huge demographic, and what he did is he went overboard. He was aiming at everybody. Shotgun didn't even cover it. He was like trying to get everybody into his Facebook ads. But think about this. When you're pulling up an ad or flying by an ad and it doesn't pertain to you, how often are you going to click? Like, probably pretty rarely. What you want to do is, it depends on the size of your company, so what I should say, is if you have a large company and you have a huge advertising budget, what you would want to do is split that up. You want to go after many small sections. So in this case, if we're going after women who like men's health and men who like men's health, I would make 2 different ads, one that targets men and one that specifically targets women, because when that person sees it, they're going to say, that's for me because that is who I am. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions with pay-per-click and that type of advertising, is that you want to throw a lot of money at it to get people into your site. But the people who are really good at doing the pay-per-click ads, like my guy, he breaks it down to minute demographics so that we know when we put this ad in front of this person, it's going to convert the best. Now, if you're a smaller company or you're just starting out, and I get this a lot, when people start out on their own, my mom is an artist. She does amazing paintings, just absolutely incredible. But when I was asking her about the demographic, because I moved from Northern California to Southern California and we're building the website and getting all this put together, I hadn't been to her art show. So I kind of had an assumption of who her demographic was, but I just wanted to make sure. And she said, everybody, like just everybody. If they like this, I'll paint it like that. If they like this, I'll paint it like that. That's not true. I had a friend who was in guitar, and he is fantastic at guitar. Spent a ton of time at music school. However, when we went to do a website for him, he's like, I do classical, I do rock, I do jazz. It's like, no. You don't. You can do that, but you need to build a website and a brand around one thing, and you need to get in front of that one thing. So if he built a website and went to people and said, I'm a jazz guitarist, people will associate him with jazz guitar. And if he had it in even a narrow style, people will remember the distinction, but they're not going to remember the generalization. So if you say, I play guitar, and like, okay, everybody plays guitar, and they go on to the next person. But if you say, I specialize in playing jazz guitar for health spas, I forget, it's health spa and resort type situations as background music to help people relax. Well, wow, now if anybody's in that niche, boom, of course they're going to convert. They're going to want to talk to them more because that's exactly the person they're talking to. If they say, I play guitar, it usually doesn't spark enough of a, this is who I am and what I do, and this is how I can help you, to really convert. And that's what, in a larger company, you'll have people that specialize in things. So our particular product works for e-commerce, it works for food production, it works for surgery centers, it works for, all these other places. But if I went out and said I did traceability for food production to a surgery center, they'll say, get out. That's not what I do. You don't do what I do. So you have to craft it in a way that is particular to each of your Steves. If you have multiple Steves, and that's excellent to know, but you need to craft your marketing to each of those Steves. And if you're just starting out, pick one. Nike does 100 different types of shoes for 100 different types of people, and 100 probably isn't enough, but they started out with one shoe and went from there. Same thing with Converse. They started out with this Con All-Stars, and boom, now they have all kinds of sportswear, but they started out selling that one shoe and making a difference in that one area. So it kind of depends on where you're at, but definitely take a look at that. If you have the resources, just break up the marketing into those different sections, and I would make sure that each of those pieces hits that demographic, that Steve, perfectly. And if you're a single person trying to work all of that, you'll go insane. It's just way too much work for one person to do. So I would find one, maybe two people to target, and just make sure that every time you talk to somebody, you make sure that they know exactly what you do in the market you serve. And if they come back and say, oh, well, I do this, you can turn the conversation and show them how you've helped somebody in the past like that. But I would pick something and go for that if you're just starting out. Cool. So that was an awesome question. Cool. Thank you. You're definitely welcome. And thank you for asking that question. That was a really good one. Are there any other questions that I can help out? You got me for the next couple minutes, and this is free stuff I usually charge for. So now is definitely the time. And we're going to be back every week. This is a regular Wednesday event. I apologize for being a little late today. I had to get the login information from Pete. But yeah, we'll start every day or every Wednesday at 6 p.m. and go to about 7, a little bit later if we need to, but we try to keep it simple to the point where it's something that you can do. And definitely getting the Steve together is one great way to start. The other, I highly recommend doing those frequently asked questions. If you need to, or if you can, if you have a notebook that you can carry with you and just write those notes to yourself. If you're out and about, you just realize like, oh, this is what people ask. Or if you just had a conversation, email yourself, man. Just throw that in an email and email yourself. So when you get back to a computer or back to something, you can write that down, because that is gold. That the frequently asked questions and the should ask questions, that's where your next sale is coming from. When you know that, that's where you're going to get that close. Right on. Well, I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to wrap it up for today. Go ahead, do the homework. Next week, we're going to have some more stuff. We're going to toss at you guys. We're going to build this up. And then, head over to C2CREIA001.com/toucan. We have a PDF here. You just download it, and it'll tell you some of the stuff we went over today, a little bit more in depth, and get that started. There's a lot of things that we can do for you, a lot of ways to get the ball rolling. And we want to build a foundation that you can stand on and be proud of for the next umpteen years. We're not going to flow and go. We're not going to teach you some weird scammy trick. It's just all going to be like real stuff that I use in my real business. This is more or less a brick and mortar business that I do. So we'll show you how to do all this and how to build your empire. So cool. Thank you guys very much for being on today. Hope you have a great night. And thank you guys very much, Wayne and Elizabeth. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up at toucanwebsites.com/contact, and that'll go straight to me. All right. Have a great night.